my job to decide where we're going and how we get there. Obviously, Matt, you've all met, he's your project lead, so he's leading the project from a commercial basis for Hilton as well, and the surrounding villages. So any questions, obviously, I know you know Matt, but if you have any questions for me, one regarding not just what we're looking to do in Hilton, but also just regarding Cambs Broadband as a whole, if you want to understand a little bit more about us, by all means fire away. I'm a big believer there's no such thing as a silly question, and actually there's nothing that's off topic as well. You know, if you want to ask me something, there's nothing that's off the table, by all means fire away. The only thing I do ask is that we hold it to the end. The reason being is we're going to be covering a little bit of detail, and we're going in, and some of you may have seen the content we're covering, some of you this will be very new content to you as well. So let's give everybody the chance to absorb what's on the slides, and then any questions at the end, fire away. And again, as I say, if you've got questions, if you need to leave anywhere between through, have a quiet word with Matt on the way out as well, and he'll be able to put you in contact with how we can get some questions answered.
Can I just check with everybody? I'm videoing, just let everybody know, because there's lots of people who couldn't make it tonight, and I'll post it up on the website. But I won't point it at you, so you can be anonymous as you like with whatever you say. So it's okay.
I get that pretty much. But so who are we? Who's Cambs Broadband? And again, I'm sure some of you would have done some googling, worked out who we are, what we do. So we're an internet service provider, that goes with the territory, but we're actually classed as a specialist internet service provider. And what we specialise in is delivering broadband into really hard to reach areas. So in the UK, that tends to be villages, because there's different challenges that are involved with villages. We've been going since 2003, so we've been in this game a little while now, and we first started with what we call wireless networks. And that's not the same as your in-house wireless network. That was a case of using wireless repeaters without having to build physical infrastructure. Now, we build fibre networks, so what's called fibre to the property networks, which is what we're looking to build in Hilton, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And the plan being that by the end of this year, we will have roughly 180 villages and a couple of towns connected to our network. All of that's possible by our third-party investment, so not only are we a commercial ISP, have access to government funding, but as such other ISPs do, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But we have significant third-party investment, and that's why we can build where some of the other providers can't. It's not that we're magic, it's not we have a different build method, it's just purely and simply that we have substantial financial backing. In terms of what that looks like, it's all well and good we're talking about 180, 200, 250 villages. I'm sure we all recognise this down here. And the coloured splodges that I've overlaid on this map, they relate to town or parish boundaries. So you can see the red arrow sitting on top of Hilton there, but we're covering everything pretty much from the M25 down near Basildon all the way up to the North Norfolk coast. Anything that's green on there has gone through the process that we're doing in Hilton at the moment. So we've gone through this project, we've approved the project, and we've either built or are building now. Anything that's purple we're currently engaging with, so it's going through the same process we're in with Hilton right now. And what that looks like roughly in terms of scale is about 101,000 people having access to the network. But what's really important is not just what we're doing now, where we're going in the future as well. So this here, same map, but what these blue dots, and doesn't show up quite as well on the projector, but they relate to either postcode or town areas. So this is what we've built. So our first project was up in Broughton, and that was our trial project back in 2017 to work out could we commercially build a full fibre network in a village where no one else has before. The answer was yes. We then focused on Essex because our head office is about there. So we focus on our heartland, because if you can't build it on your doorstep, there's no point trying to build it anywhere else. We then built this. So we built up in South Norfolk, a little bit out in Cambridgeshire way, and you can see that's when we started to expand down into South Essex. We're now finishing this. So we're building a little bit more in Norfolk, a bit more in Cambridgeshire. So you've kind of got Toft, Bourne, all the way out to Wesley, come Tetworth, out that way, just to sort of give an idea of geography. And then we started to fill in the gaps in Essex. This is what we're engaging with now. So this is where we're going through the process right now to try and justify a build. That's where we're going next. And that. And that. So you can kind of see the scale of actually what we're looking to do. So when we talk about the map that I showed you with 100,000 people, the plan being by 2026 to have somewhere between 750,000 people having access to our network. So it gives you an idea of the scale. Now obviously Hilton is a very small but very important part of that tonight, but that shows you kind of where we're looking to move across East Anglia as well. So why? Why are we spending £146 million? Why am I here this evening? Why are you all here this evening? Gratefully, must admit. And the reason we're doing this is because there is a change coming in the telecoms industry as a whole, not just broadband. And that change is, and we're going to talk about in a minute, how the current network is not fit for purpose or will not be fit for purpose in the future. So the current network that serves the majority of Hilton, and we'll talk about a little bit about some different technology as well, that serves about 7 houses on G-Fast.
Yes, 6 or 7, I think.
6 or 7 houses. So the majority of the village, and actually the majority of the country, is served by what we call a fibre to the cabinet network. So you might have heard it called FTTC, part fibre, part copper, or some providers call it superfast fibre. And the way that this network works is it takes your broadband from the exchange in London, so where we're sitting here, it's actually served by a place called Telehouse North. It takes your broadband as a data signal down a fibre optic cable, so a blinking laser delivering a binary signal to the green cabinet in the village. What that green cabinet does is it takes that data signal, turns it into an electrical signal, and passes it down a copper line all the way to your property. Now, in most cases, that copper line is the original telephone line that was put in place when your property was built. There are some fundamental strengths to this network, and there are some fundamental weaknesses. The first strength is when it was built, when we moved into needing faster broadband, there was already a phone line in place, so it was very easy to slot in and build on the existing network. The challenge is, those copper lines were put in place, in most cases, before the internet even existed. So they were never designed to carry data. They were designed to carry a voice signal, an electrical current, but not a binary, large bandwidth data signal. So, because of that, on a non-amplified network, and we'll talk about that, what the difference is in a minute, but because of that, their ability to carry data is limited. So we have 2 measures that we measure most broadband technologies in, and that's upload and download speed. Download speed, how quickly I can receive data from the internet. Upload speed, how quickly I can send that data. The maximum download speed you can get down a copper line that's not amplified is 80 megabits per second, and that comes straight out of the cabinet. The physicists amongst us, and I can just about remember my GCSE physics, will know that obviously the more you pass a signal down a copper line, it encounters resistance from the copper. So the further you try and push that signal, the weaker that signal gets. Likewise, electrical signals, if you've ever had a magnet next to your television, they interfere with each other. So even though your download speed might be 80 megabits per second, when you try and send a signal back up onto the internet, the other direction, they interfere with each other. That's why your upload speed is significantly lower to your download speed. Add on everybody else on your street using a signal, and they start to interfere with each other. Add on the fact there's a finite amount of bandwidth coming out of that cabinet, so at peak times in the evening when we're all using our broadband, and we're all fighting over that signal, you can see why the broadband fluctuates, and why it goes up, and why it goes down. The really important factor with a rural community is this one, it's distance. If we were in the middle of Cambridgeshire, you'd have 100 properties connected within a very short distance because it's quite a high population density. We look out in a beautiful village, the space that we have just on the village green, properties are further away in a rural community. And that leads to signal drop off over distance. So what this graph basically shows is the rate at which a broadband signal, data signal, drops off over a standard copper line. So for every 700 metres you push a signal down a piece of copper, it halves. And that's obviously assuming no other factors. It's a brand new piece of copper that hasn't degraded, hasn't broken down, and no one else is using that line at the same time. Obviously those factors could drop the starting point lower. And the key point is this is not 700 metres from where you can see the cabinet, this is 700 metres where that line is running. And obviously in a village, as we know, the distance is greater. When we look at where we're going with broadband, there's a couple of factors. So I'm sure we're all familiar with Ofcom. Ofcom every year publish, I call it a school report, is the preview report on telecoms in the UK. And what that report looks at a couple of things. First of all, the usage in the last year across the UK, across different demographics, but it also makes predictions on what we will need in the future. So last year's Connecting Nations report, and we're waiting on this one at the moment to see the updated figures, stated that the median UK requirement exceeded, in an average household, 80 megabits per second. It also went on to say if TV, work from home, gaming, all these different devices continue to grow at the rate they will, but by 2025, 40% of us will need a gigabit, 1,000 megabits per second download speed. That report also said if actually TV is never going to improve any more than it is, which it probably will, if gaming doesn't improve anymore, if no one else shops more from home, we're still going to need faster speeds, but they won't be as aggressive. And what that graph is basically we've taken the last 6 preview reports and we've charted where they state we're going to be in terms of averages. So you can see back in 2016 we actually only needed 28 megabits per second as an average. Now we need more than 80. By the end of this year, if we just continue that trend, we're anticipating it to be over 100 meg. Why? We're using more internet. It's not rocket science, it's not that suddenly we've all moved into this space age. There are just more devices in our homes now that use internet. The figures you're seeing underneath, these are the average bandwidth requirements for that device. There's not one that's running at absolute peak, so that will be much higher if you're downloading the latest Call of Duty. Likewise, if you're streaming in 4K but with surround sound or Dolby Atmos sound on there, that will be higher. Amazon is significantly higher because of Amazon's X-ray function as well. So when you think of an average home, 4-person home in the UK, mum and dad might be watching TV on separate rooms or doing something differently. That could be using 25 meg in one room, 25 meg in another room, that's 50 meg. Child's upstairs doing their homework on their laptop whilst on their phone, texting their friends. Suddenly, you can see we're now at 70 meg. All it's going to take is the 4th child to come home, flick on Match of the Day upstairs in their bedroom, you're over 80 megabits per second. That's before you add in Ring doorbells, Alexas, Sonoses, all the other devices we have. And when you go home tonight, if you just look in any room you sit in, it's not necessarily about the device you're immediately using. Your smartphone, your iPad, your laptop, they're all connected and all drawing a bandwidth signal just through automatic updates. So it's not a case of where it used to be, this space age need for fast broadband where the hyperconnected, the computer geeks, i.e. me, amongst us, were drawing huge amounts of data. Actually, it's the average requirement now. We need more data. These are some statistics that I'm always wary about talking about the value of the home because it's subjective, because the market moves and there is no hard and fast that yes, if you put broadband, fibre broadband into your home, you will increase the house price by X. However, there are a lot of surveys done on the benefit of full fibre broadband to your home and the desirability of your home. So ISP Review, and I'd encourage everyone, if you want to learn more about broadband, to check out ISP Review. They're an independent commentator, so they have no bias to any provider anywhere in the industry, but they do all sorts of really cool sort of surveys and detailing on what we need. And the thing I love most about them is they put it in plain English, so they make it available for anyone to understand, even if you're not from a telecoms background. They did a survey that found just shy of 70% of us would be put off from buying a beautiful new house. The actual question that was asked on there was, would you buy your dream home if it had slow broadband? It's a yes or no question. And then the further question, it asks you to rank broadband versus other devices in your home. Broadband actually came out as the second most important device in our home after electricity, but above people's fridges, because we place a higher importance on our broadband than we do our fridge. And that's really key. So, fibre to the property, there are other types of gigabit capable broadband, whether that be wireless or different services, but it's still a relatively exclusive club in the UK that has access to fibre to the property. So I'll never make a claim to say, right, your house price would increase by X, but what I would say is if you were marketing your house, and 2 miles down the road there's another village that had full fibre broadband, and yours didn't, why would I move here when I can move there when I myself, I work from home. I'm not sure how many of us in this room do, but I don't ever envisage going back to an office now. I can't pay my mortgage without having a stable internet connection, so I won't move anywhere without a stable internet connection. And I'm not alone in that, that's the same across the market. So we ask this question a lot, and you'll see it a lot in our marketing materials and a lot in our communications. You know, have we run out of time? Has demand outstripped supply? We would say yes. So would other bodies as well. And it's not just us that talks about it as well, and we'll come on to that in a minute. So the solution, it's kind of obvious, we've been talking about it a lot and you've seen a lot of our written stuff. It's a full fibre network. This network is different. The exchange in London delivers down a different fibre cable, so it's a different, we call it backhaul, a different route to the cabinet. A different fibre cable, your broadband, which comes to a new green cabinet. That green cabinet, instead of turning it into an electrical signal, continues to push your broadband as a data signal all the way down a fibre line to the back of your router. So there is no copper anywhere in the system. And it doesn't use any of the existing network. It's a brand new network from origin to source. There is no using of the existing OpenReach network. A couple of things that are fundamentally different about it in terms of the data and the speeds you can receive. Obviously fibre, first of all, we're talking about the speed of light. It's the way that fibre works in its simplest sense. You have a laser at one end blinking a signal, a receiver at the other, it's moving at the speed of light. So distance within reason is inconsequential. When I say within reason, I think we've worked out you have to go around the equator 1.5 times before you see a drop off on speed, so in real terms there is no difference. But because it's designed to carry data, you can carry a lot more data and you're carrying it quicker. So at the moment, in terms of download speeds, we can reliably deliver 1,000 megabits per second now, but actually that fibre will carry infinitely more. Japan have just tested the same type of fibre we use. They passed an internet service, an internet speed that was 200,000 terabits, which is 1,000 gigabits per second, down a piece of fibre optic cable. Obviously we don't need that now at all, but the point is the fibre itself is future-proof because the glass is optically pure. All you do is change the router at one end, the box in the cabinet at the other, and the signal can go faster. Because we're dealing with light, in its purest sense we use something called multiplexing, which is where we pass multiple signals down the same piece of fibre optic cable. So it might be, lady and gent at the end, that I supply your broadband with a red laser, or you, sir, I might supply your broadband with a blue laser, green, purple, etc. What that means is we can use the entire colour spectrum to pass different signals down the same piece of glass, which means your upload and your download speed will never interfere with each other. So that's how we keep them symmetrical. That's why if you're getting 1,000 meg download speed, you get 1,000 meg upload speed. So that's what we're proposing for Hilton, a new network, and it's called FTTP, full fibre. And when we look at why it's important, obviously we've spoken a lot about our usage and our requirements, and what we have used. But you'll notice we talk also a lot about what we will need and where the industry is moving towards. So again, those of you that are at the online presentation or that are tech geeks like me that really follow TVs because you've got nothing better to do, will know that in October the TV industry changed. It changed with this, Sky Glass. Sky Glass is Sky's first proprietary TV. So they've released an HD TV. It's a fantastic TV. I'm not just saying that because there's one in my living room, but it is a great TV at a great price. But what makes Sky Glass different, all of the services are now delivered over Wi-Fi. So it doesn't use a satellite dish, doesn't use a box, doesn't use an aerial port. It looks to deliver every signal over the internet. And the reason this is important is it's the breakout device that's changing the industry. There's a similar device that launched a little while ago with the iPhone. Again, sadly, I'm old enough to remember the launch of the iPhone. I remember when Steve Jobs stood on that stage and he was talking about the revolution of technology, things that we now take for granted, swiping a screen, listening to music. And I remember looking at that at the time. I was actually working in phone retail. I was like, well, that's great, but we'll never catch on. I'm happy with my Motorola Razr. I had a flip phone at the time. I don't need that, and I don't really want that. And I wasn't alone, because globally, when iPhone launched, it only sold 1.4 million units. Because it was viewed, a bit like people are starting to view Sky Glass now. Yeah, it's great, but my current TV's fine. I don't need it. I've got a Sky Dish, I've got Sky Q. If we fast forward to 2020, we all know what was going on around the world in 2020. Factories were closed, supply lines closed, you couldn't get drivers out into trucks. Apple still sold 194 million iPhones in 2020. And since launch, just shy of 2 billion. The way we use data is constantly changing, and the way we use our internet is constantly changing as well. Again, two high street brands. Who wants to hazard a guess at what happened in June 2012? Netflix launched in the UK. The way we watch films. And again, there's a young girl on our sales team, a girl called Beth. She's 21, and it's her first proper sales role. Trying to explain to her that you used to have to not only buy a videotape, rewind it, and then give it back was mind-blowing to her. But the way that we are using data in our homes, recreation has changed. I still remember when everyone was worried about the terrestrial TVs and the digital switchover. That was a decade ago. Spotify, Sonos, when was the last time you bought a CD? We're not talking about being a keen gamer, and gaming we're going to talk about in a minute because it's a great example. But we're using more and more internet right now as we speak. And I know, well, I'm hazarding, I'm not going to say I know, I'm guessing that the majority of us in this room aren't necessarily keen gamers. You might all prove me wrong, but gaming is one industry where you can see the change in bandwidth usage and you can measure it quite keenly. So this game was the blockbuster of 2007, Call of Duty, when on everyone's Christmas list was a PlayStation or an Xbox, and everyone wanted to buy that game. And the way you play that game is you go down to Argos or have you buy the game on a Blu-ray disc, plug it into the games console. There might be a very small update, just a software update, then you play it. The latest Call of Duty that was released at the tail end of last year is 134 gig nearly. And you can't buy it on a disc. If you buy the disc, that will tell you bought it, but you still need to download pretty much the majority of the game from the internet. When we look at that, you bought children, grandchildren, friends, partners, whatever, you bought a £450 games console. You just spent the best part of 90, I believe it is now. You have to forgive me, I'm not a gamer, £90 on the latest Call of Duty. And on your current internet, you can't even turn it on for nearly 6.5 hours. And in comparison, on a full fibre connection, it'd be under 20 minutes. That's just one example of how we're using more data, but how our consumption isn't matching the supply that we're demanding at the moment. It's not just us that say it's important. So again, whether you love or hate the current government, and that's always a question that divides the room at the moment, but the government recognises the need for faster broadband. We're a G7 economy, and we're ranked 48th in the world for connectivity. The two don't marry up, and our growth as an economy is limited until we improve. So the government has something called Project Gigabit, which again you can go onto the government website, you can see all their latest published reports. But Project Gigabit is the government's plans to give everyone access to gigabit capable broadband, so 1,000 megabits. And in rural settings, there's something called GBVS, or Gigabit Broadband Voucher Scheme. And what that is essentially is this gift aid for your broadband. The idea being there's a government fund of £210 million, which ISPs can access, so internet service providers can access that money if they're building networks in rural locations to offset the cost. Because traditionally, if I was going to go and build £500,000 worth of broadband network, I'd go to the middle of Cambridge where I'll pick up 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 customers. I won't go to a leafy green village where I'm lucky if I even touched triple figures. So it's an incentive from the government, but it's not an incentive that can be added onto revenue or profit. All it's used for is just to offset the cost. So for a residential property, there's a fund of £1,500 per home. For businesses, it's £3,500. And that's the government putting money behind it to say, look, this is really important. Now, one of the questions I always get is going, fantastic, but you're telling me it's important, you're telling me it's critical, I'm just going to get upgraded anyway. You know, Openreach, my current supplier, will have to upgrade me at some point. And the challenge comes, the normal commercial build, it being viable for most ISPs. So this is a screenshot taken from Openreach's website. And what this looks at, so these coloured shapes relate to build areas. They're not necessarily village or parish boundaries, they're build areas. And Openreach have colour coded them. So anything that's purple, Openreach plan to have built by 2024. Anything that's yellow, which there isn't on there, is by 2025. Anything that's red, by 26, and anything that's highlighted green is built. And there are no plans for Openreach to upgrade Hilton at all on the commercial build. Partly because there are properties in Hilton that have access to a technology called GFAST. So on an average basis, Openreach have met their quota for speed. But secondly, because it's not cost effective. That's why we're here. When you think back to our original map, there's a reason it doesn't just go as a block of colour. There's a reason it forms shapes, because we go to the areas that other providers don't. That's why we're here standing in front of you right now. So yeah, that's why we're here. That's what we're looking to bring for you. And in terms of how we plan to build this network and what our plans are for Hilton. So I'm sure all of you will now recognise the parish boundary of Hilton, and each of these green dots relates to a property. So it's not necessarily a house, it could be a business property, the village hall, but it relates to a property that can receive a broadband service. And what we're looking to do is provide a service to every single property within the parish boundary with a full fibre network, and we're looking to do it for free. So we're looking to build this network fully funded by us, and where applicable, assisted by the gigabit voucher scheme. We're not reliant on it at all, but obviously if we have access to it, fantastic. That allows us to grow our network further. What this lovely man has been doing over the last 2-3 months is working in the community just to gauge is their interest. So he may well have knocked on your door, you might have seen him at a different village event, say, look, actually, is this something that's worth our time in Hilton? Or if there's no interest, not a problem. You've seen our rollout plans, we move on to the next village. Great news is, yes, there has been enough interest. So nearly half of the village have said, tell me more. You know, not a commitment, but have said, look, I'd like to know more about having faster broadband. Which means we can now launch it as a commercial project, which is what we did the other night on our online meeting last week, and that's kind of what we're here just echoing this evening. So, not only when we build these networks do we build for the whole community at no charge, we also invest back into the community. So we have a separate arm to our business called the Hypercharge Foundation. It's a charity, it's with the charity commissions, and what we do is we invest back into rural communities. Part of that, and part of our pledge, is that when we build a village, we also build infrastructure back in the village. So we provide the village hall, free broadband for life, which we've already set up and is ready to go when we build the network, and also any pubs in the area, we provide free public broadband, as well as any other causes. So some of the villages in Suffolk, we've worked with church restoration funds, village green funds, we've built play parks, provided books for primary schools. If there's any other cause in the village, obviously they're more bespoke, each village knows what's its biggest cause, but that's our pledge back to the community. Now, one of the things I do get asked, and having a quick read of notice boards, is, are you going to absolutely trash the village then? So you're doing all this for free. You can either have it good, quick, or cheap. You can't have all three, you can choose two. And the short answer is no, we're not. So we're quite unique amongst ISPs. There's, again, quite a select club. We're not the only ones, but we have access to all of the existing infrastructure that's in place already that's delivering your copper. So any Openreach hole, so the underground ducting, any Openreach pole, or any UK power network poles that can take a telecom service, we have access to. So we can run our network down that existing route. Which means if your home already has a copper line coming to it, which most homes do, we shouldn't need to dig your drive up. We shouldn't need to put hundreds of poles up everywhere. We can just follow the existing route. And so roughly, and this is a very rough ballpark, about 70% of our network is overhead and about 30% is underground. So that's because of the existing infrastructure in the mix. There are a couple of caveats to that. First and foremost, if I look at that, I think that's a sycamore tree, that very large tree out in the village green. If its roots grow through the underground ducting that's in place by Openreach, we're not going to put a brand new fibre cable through an already damaged duct. Likewise, if a tractor's hit a pole and it's now listing or it's rotting at the base, it doesn't mean we can't build it. What it does mean is we're not averse to installing our own infrastructure. So just because we prefer to use the existing infrastructure, we're still not averse to putting infrastructure back in place. And the reason we do that mix, we can deploy to your network far quicker with less disruption by using the existing infrastructure, but by sense checking it and making sure everything's fit for purpose, it's built to last as well. But to be absolutely clear, it's still a brand new network. So our fibre cables, even if it's running on a BT Openreach pole, but it's our fibre network all the way from the exchange to the end of the router. So I'm going to take a slurp of my Dr. Pepper because I've been talking quite quickly for about half an hour now. So one of the things, and you'll have heard me mentioning it already, that we've been looking at is the spread of usage across the community as well. We know that some houses will have an army of teenagers all playing Xbox until the early hours in the morning. So they don't need huge amounts of speed, they just need a reliable connection. So what we've got is we've kind of got 3/4 core packages that we think best represent something for the majority. So before we get down into each individual package, all of our broadband services are subject to the same T's and C's. So they're a 24-month contract. All the prices are inclusive of VAT. There's no line rental to pay because we don't use an existing copper line, and the prices are fixed for the duration of the contract. For some providers, rise against inflation. You see it every 6 to 8 months. We don't do that. We do have a fourth package that sits here, and what I'll do, I'll talk about that in a minute. So our entry-level package, the Ultra 300, that's normally a £48 a month package. The challenge, with me talking to you about full fibre networks, is I'm assuming the majority of us in this room have never had access to a full fibre network. So it becomes very difficult to work out what speed you need till you've sampled it, the same way you wouldn't buy a car without test driving. So what we do with the Ultra 300 for all customers is we say, look, for the first 6 months, take our £48 a month service at £28 a month, the price of our standard 50 meg service. If at the end of those 6 months you decide, fantastic, the speed has been a game changer for me, the kids can work on their homework while I watch the football, fantastic, the price just reverts to its normal £48. If you found that actually speed isn't the biggest thing but the reliability has been great, you can continue to pay £28 a month. The speed just drops to a symmetrical 50 meg, so 50 meg up and download speed. You can always upgrade again. Should you wish in the future, you can always go back up. But it's the opportunity to sample and try a full fibre network at the price of a copper network. Our Hyper 600, we do an introductory offer on there, so it's not a drop down. So it's normally £55 a month, but for the first 6 months we do it for £29.50. And then for homes that require the fastest speeds now, we offer a 900 meg service. And all of these speeds are average, and they're not so Ofcom's mandated that an average speed needs to be measured over a 7-day period. That's measured over a 24-hour period. So it's a very consistent speed, but they're average speeds. Now, when we talk about no line rental fee, that's because we're not using the existing phone line to deliver your broadband service. So you don't have to have a landline service if you don't want one. So, for example, in my home, we've never used a landline, so when we got connected to fibre, we just never took a landline service. However, we do recognise that some people do want to have a landline service for whatever reason, so we offer those as well. Again, before we look at the individual points of each different service, same T's and C's, so you don't need to go out and buy a new phone, and you can keep your existing phone number as well, so you won't be allocated a new phone number. The charge to normally register your number to our network is £15. We don't want anyone out of pocket for that, so to offset that, we give you the first 3 months free of charge as well. We're mandated to charge that by Ofcom. Even though you're taking a phone service, there's no line rental. It's still running over the fibre, so you don't pay an on-top line rental fee, and they're all unlimited packages. Our basic phone service, £6 a month, unlimited calls to UK landline, and unlimited inbound calls from anywhere. Standard phone service, unlimited calls to UK landlines and mobiles. Again, inbound calls are not restricted. And then our international phone service, there's no prizes for guessing what you get with that. You also get 68 countries as well, on top of the standard. You don't have to have a phone service if you don't want to. You can add it at a later date. You can choose when you want to add it to a service. But the option is there, should you wish. So there are packages, and that's what we think best represents everyone. So whether someone wants a landline service or not, they offer all sorts of different options there. So it's great, it's fantastic, and by now it's kind of sitting there thinking this is an awesome thing for the village. The challenge comes, how do we justify our investors to bring it to not just Hilton but all rural communities? When we build these networks, we need to know that there's demand. So this isn't a sales exercise of getting you to switch from Talk to PlusNet or Sky to BT. We're talking about building a bespoke network, not just for your community but for the area. So in order for us to make this happen, we need to know if we build it, it will get used. And the way we commit to that, the way we measure that, is we invite residents to pre-order their broadband. The idea being, if we build it for free and build it within our time frames, and that customer is out of their existing contract, they commit to taking a 24-month contract with us. So it is a commitment. It's a commitment saying, yep, when I'm out of contract and it's built, I'll take the service. What the village benefits from, in terms of that commitment, is first of all, if you pre-order your broadband, there's no payment at all. We don't take an upfront admin fee or anything like that. It's just you saying, yes, I'll take that service when it's in, please. But there's also no payment to get connected. So normally when we've built a network to send an engineer out to connect you onto the core network, we would charge a call-out fee of 225. We waive that fee with the pre-order. And likewise, we provide all the hardware, so not just the router, but the internal fibre cabling for inside your home as well. But that's the big one. It secures our ability. You know, it lets us know that there is demand in the village. We need, on average, about 25% of the community to say yes. You know, to turn around and say, absolutely, we'll take that service if you build it. In Hilton, that's 116. 37 properties have already said yes. So that number's already started to come down by nearly a factor of a third. And we've had this offer open for approximately 4 weeks. So it gives you an idea in terms of the traction we've already had in the community, but also the achievability of this. On average, our projects, by the time we connect to the last house, they're normally at about a 40% penetration, just to give you a rough ballpark figure. Some are lower, but so we did a project in Sudbury, which was much lower in an urban area, but in rural communities, it's about 40%. So that's why we're here. That's why we talk to you. That's why we talk about broadband as well. But we also have our commitment to you. So you'll notice I said when you're out of contract, it's when your service with us would start. Unfortunately, the good people of Hilton didn't choose to all take a broadband contract out on the same day to make my life very easy to make the network go live. You will all be in an existing contract and they will all finish on different days. So the way we work with this, when we achieve our threshold number, our clock starts ticking. We have a year. And that's our commitment to you as a customer. And in that year, we either have to have the network built or designed, built with the intent to supply you with it and an exact connection date. We have already started the designs for Hilton. Because of the early traction we've had, the designs have already been started. We've brought that process forward by about 6 months already. When the network's complete, we build to each home. So if you secure the connection, connect to your home, and we'd make sure the service is live, working, and if you've opted to receive 600 megabits, for example, that you're fully receiving that. However, still going to be with the provider, whether that's Sky, BT, whoever. So what we do is once we've connected that service, we leave it there for a year for free. And anyone that secures their pre-order can use that service free of charge for up to a year or until their existing contract runs out. That way, no one misses out on this service just because they've got 6 weeks left with PlusNet or half a year left with BT. Because the whole point of this is building this network for the future and letting people have access to this network. We're really proud of that. We do a lot of research on it. We're the only people in the UK that do that. Some providers give you 3 months, some give you even 6. We're the only people that give a year free of charge. That's our way, making sure that no one misses out. So that's what we do. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about, so excluding any FTTP and GFAST, and I said we'll talk about GFAST, and we'll talk about it in a second because I'm conscious there may be people in the room that have access to that service. The fastest guaranteed speed on the fibre to the cabinet network in Hilton is 70 megabits per second. The slowest guaranteed speed is 14 megabits per second. If you're receiving less than 14 megabits per second, you've actually got a really strong case right now to go back to your ISP as well. So the digital divide is the gap between the haves and the have-nots in terms of connectivity. And it's what, when you read Project Gigabit, the government talks about as urgent requirements. That digital divide is 56 megabits per second. One of the queries we get a lot is people turn around and say, well, why should I come on board with a fibre network? I'm getting 70 meg, works absolutely fine for now, thanks very much. I don't need this service, so I'm going to stay where I am. I'm not going to pre-order your service, which is fine. When we build our network, the fastest speed in Hilton will be 900 meg. And if you chose not to be connected, and you chose to stay on your 70 meg, and we move on to the next village, so we don't come back to reconnect, you might be, if you're really lucky, on a maximum speed of 70 meg. that divides 830 megabits per second. That will be the gap between the haves and the have-nots, assuming the have-nots have got the best speeds right now. That's why this is so important. So that's what we're looking to do. I'm acutely aware. I've had a very long conversation about broadband. So what I want to do is tell you a little bit about how we're going to do it, and then actually open up to your guys' questions, which I think is the most important thing. So this is what we've done. I'm sure you've all had at least one letter from us at some point now, introducing us, introducing Matt, and talking a little bit about what it is that we're doing. And anyone that's registered an interest, what that is that's our ability to talk to you on a one-on-one basis about your services. So registering an interest is not a commitment at all, it's just saying, look, tell me more. And Matt or one of our team at the office will contact you to say, look, right, walk me through your current provisions, this is what we recommend. Because even if you take a 300 meg service or a 50 meg service to start with, you can always move to a faster service down the line, but it's about making sure you get the right one from the off. We'll continue to hold meetings, webinars. What's great is it's fantastic we can now meet face to face. It's been about 3 years since I started doing these properly, and doing them virtually is great, but I love interacting and talking to you all on a personal basis. And we'll also hold Q&A sessions. This is all very new to Hilton right now. I'm assuming in 6-8 weeks time everyone will kind of have the gist. We might just have questions. So again, we might hire the village hall, but it's less of a presentation, more of a drop down and just fire questions away at us. I didn't see a pub on my way in. Is there a pub?
Yeah.
Perfect. If you see Matt at the pub, he will stand you next to a pub. Abuse his expense account. I intend to tonight, so that's what it's there for. But the idea being, we want you to have the ability to ask us any questions. Come and talk to us and ask us any questions, because I recognise that I live, sleep and breathe broadband, so it's relatively straightforward for me. This might be the first time you've actually really understood how your internet works, or actually considered your home connection. So if you do have questions, and you don't feel comfortable asking this evening, there's no such thing as a silly question. Come and ask. This is what we're asking you to do. First of all, if you want it, let us know. That's kind of rule one, day one. The other thing, help us get the message out there. When we're working on a 25% penetration, I don't have a problem with people saying no. I have no problem with people going, consider all the options. It's not for me. That's fine. What really doesn't keep me up at night, but what really worries me, is if after we finish a village and we leave Hilton, someone comes forward and said, I had no idea this was happening. Have I missed the boat? That worries me. I want everybody to have the opportunity to make an informed decision. So help us spread the word. I understand we've got a great social media presence in Hilton, and a really helpful Facebook group as well, as not all just talking about dog poo on the village green. Help us spread that word, not just in terms of the benefits of the service, but when Matt will be around to answer any questions, so people can come and ask any questions in a safe environment. The big one's that. Any suggestions? So I spoke about the church fund in Suffolk. That photo was from the village of Hoxton. We have a charity pub quiz in the middle of summer. It was great fun. We raised about £900 for the church fund, which was brilliant. My expense account got absolutely bladdered behind the bar, which was good fun. But the idea being everyone could come down and see us, talk to us, meet us. The same thing if you have suggestions, if there's events in the village, if anything you think we need to have a presence at, let us know. It's not about us riding roughshod, it's about us listening to you as a community. And in that vein, I've spoken for quite a while. It's your turn now. So I'm going to have a slurp of my Dr. Pepper, and then, as I say, any questions you have, fire away.
I've got a couple. I suppose the first one, it'd be really helpful to understand the experience of people who are already receiving your service in other parts of East Anglia. So, did they experience any difficulties? Has it been absolutely smooth? Is it a bit? I'm not asking you to answer the question now, but I think if you want to get people on board, I'd certainly like to understand that.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not thrilled with the service I get at the moment, but it's not bad, So there's that. For you to think about. The second thing, just so if I understand it correctly, if you're sort of early adopter, so if you pre-order, you essentially are, compared to somebody who signs up after the network is completed, you're gaining £375 on the connection and the router, plus whatever is this unexpired
Correct? Yeah.
Free period. Okay, so that's a big benefit, isn't it, for
There's
people signing on early?
absolutely, and there's another key factor is this is all based on if we hit our threshold. So if we hit our 25% penetration threshold, we'll look to build to the whole village. If we hit 20%, there's obviously enough to build a network, but what we'll then do is look at areas of low demand. So there might be a road where no one orders it at all. And we say, look, this part of the village all wants it. It hits our 25% penetration, perhaps even exceeds it in some cases. This part doesn't. Right here, right now, my aim is to provide it to every property in the village. If I don't get demand in an area of the village, I will strip it out because I won't detriment the rest of the village. So when we talk about pre-ordering or ordering the service in the future for a connection, right here, right now, I don't see it being a risk at all. But in some communities, which is why I talk a lot about spreading the word, we have had to remove areas. People go, oh, I'd love to be connected. We don't have a network down your road. Really sorry, there wasn't enough demand when we came and spoke to you. And the customer experience piece, I think, is really important. Has it, and that's why I paused, has it been plain sailing for every customer since we started? No. No, it hasn't at all. Has it got a lot better? Yes, it has indeed. So there's been a couple of things. If you look on, and I'm a big believer in looking at any company's reviews, look at our Trustpilot. People always say to me, they go, your Trustpilot reviews, you're rated 3.7 stars, average. We're actually really proud of that. When you look at BT, 1.2 stars, Sky, 1.1, Virgin, I think the other week they were 0.9, they've just jumped back up to 1.3. Actually compared to like for like, our customers are happier, and the biggest complaint is about time to deliver. So either we take too long or we didn't meet our build timelines. There was quite a large event that happened about 2.5 years ago that kind of stopped every business from having large groups of people together, which people tend to forget. But that isn't the sole reason. You know, it'd be unfair of me to blame just COVID for our delivery timelines. Some issues were due to way-leave permissions, they were minimal. Some issues were due to take up in a village where we didn't get the penetration we needed, so we had to extend the project. A lot of them were due to a third party that we were using up until 6 weeks ago. So we were using a different civils engineering company, and their work with highways wasn't good. It wasn't meeting our standard at all. So we've actually changed our build partners now in light of that, because we recognised coming out of the pandemic what we were hearing back from our project managers wasn't actually the case. So we've changed that, and we're now delivering faster. In terms of our urban builds, that's where you can measure it. So Sudbury is a town, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's on the Essex-Suffolk border. That took us about 13 months to deliver a service. Rendlesham and Ipswich, we're delivering a service in 3.5 weeks. So we're constantly reviewing the way that we build. I can't commit we're going to build Hilton in 3.5 weeks, and I would just like to caveat that now. But we are reviewing the way we build as well. So yeah, absolutely our customer experience, and we can provide you with different case studies of different villages. We don't shy away from the fact we haven't always got it right all the time. What we do say is we own our mistakes and we learn from them.
Just one more, if I
Yeah,
may. So the difference from our perspective with the situation we're in now is we have a choice of service provider, whereas you, in terms of FTTP, you become a monopoly provider.
No.
No.
Yes and no.
Question.
So yes, when you're within your 24-month contract, we are the provider of choice. Because we've provided it, we need to know there's a take-up. The whole reason we're building this network, being completely transparent about the reason I do what I do and all of us come to work, we're looking to build this network as large as possible so that by 2025, when something called the CWP, the Common Wholesale Platform, goes live nationally, we provide our fibre service to all the third-party providers, so Vodafone, TalkTalk, PlusNet. Essentially, we open the network up for other providers. Our initial meeting when we join the CWP is in November this year. So at that point, by the time everyone in Hilton is connected, by the time it's built and everyone's seen out their 24-month contract, the network will be open to any third-party provider that wants to provide your service.
Thank you.
Can I follow up with a quick question that Richard said? If you decided to sign up after the initial offer and you pay your extra connection premium and you buy a router, can you select another router, a third-party router, rather than spend your 150 quid on yours?
So the 150 quid isn't just for the router.
Right.
It's for a couple of things. One being called the OLT, which is the optical line termination, which is basically how the fibre stops being a cable and becomes something you can plug into.
Right.
So we call it a router on a slide for parity, but it's all the kit that goes with it. You can use your own third-party router. It doesn't reduce the cost. So, you know, there's still that £150 for the
Okay,
kit.
all right.
But should you wish to use your own router, you can do so.
Right, so the 200 and whatever it was
So the
doesn't include that. That's purely.
225 gets the fibre to your house.
Right,
The 150 gets it from the box at the front, at your front door, into the house where a router
Okay.
can be plugged in.
Good, thank you.
One question is, like, with us, we're in a 2-year, 24-month contract, which finishes in September. So, sort of, how's your build plan at the moment in regards?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So obviously we're currently in May, but let's call it June, just for clarity. We aim to have everything from this stage of the project, the absolute latest, signed off by the start of October. So end of September, we plan to go, right, we're either building Hilton or we're not. Everything's making this thing is going to be a yes, we are. So we're going to look to build it, at which point we then have a year from that point. So let's say your contract expires in September,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So let's say the 1st of September, and we say 1st of September, bang, you know what, we're building Hilton. My advice, and I take this with a pinch of salt, I'm not in a position to offer financial advice. What I would do, I should say, is take a 12-month contract with an existing copper provider, run that until your connection date, which will be approximately within about 6 months at that time. We connect to you, you'll then still have 6 months of whatever that copper contract is.
Yeah.
You use the service for free, then your contract with us goes live. Any other questions?
In your build day,
Yep.
when you're building your network, are you bringing people up as you build?
Yes.
So as you complete a
Yeah.
street, that street then goes live, and then you move on to the next,
Yeah,
just
so
extending it.
We build what we call our spine of the network first, which runs through the village, which is where the whole core network runs off. So we provide backhaul to that, we build the spine, and then what we do is we break the village up into build areas, and then our connections teams, there's two sides. There's our civils team, which go in and build that spine, because obviously it's a different type of engineering skill to be able to tunnel under a road than it is to go in someone's home and connect. So our build team build the core, they hand that network over to our connections team, who then go around and do the individual home properties. Of a village of about Hilton, we're looking at about 500
It's 426.
426 now, because we've removed properties that are out of scope. 426 homes. We'd anticipate from the first property to the last property, roughly about 5 weeks from that point.
What's the support like? 24/7?
So engineering, so yes, depending on the different levels of support, yes it is the blanket answer, but obviously different levels within it. Just routine customer service inquiries, I want to change this on my bill, is Monday to Saturday, 8 till 10 I believe. Obviously we have an emergency, 24-hour if the network goes down, great, we fix it, and obviously we monitor our network as well. We have monitoring both in the exchanges in London, but then also at our head office in Colchester as well. And if for whatever reason you can't ring through, you have an online portal, and I always look at this as you can still use it on a phone, don't worry, we get if your internet's down, but you have an online portal that 24 hours you can raise a ticket and chat to someone as well.
Actually, just on that, so if the network goes in, I mean, BT have this sort of backup thing, don't they, where if the network goes down, you can then effectively get your internet over their mobile. Yeah. Is there any backup like that, or if the network goes down?
Short answer, no. And the reason being is we don't work with a mobile provider at the moment. If the network was to go down, it's when we can reconnect the network. The key point to look at is why networks go down. Now obviously if I take a cherry picker straight through a telegraph pole, that's kind of obvious, everything's going to go down, probably including your power in some cases. If it's a case of contention, which is where you're fighting over that signal, sometimes networks reach maximum capacity, they just drop and they come back up against the server needs to reset. So various different reasons. Fibre is inherently more stable than copper, so a thunderstorm won't knock out a fibre network, a power surge won't knock out a fibre network. Driving the cherry picker through the middle of it will. So if it's what we call a network critical fault, which is the idea that the fibre line has physically been broken, our SLA, our service level agreement, if it's on an OpenReach pole, OpenReach have to fix it within 12 hours for us. Their customers, they give 72 hours, so they have to fix it within 12 hours for us, which brings your network back up. We maintain our network. The biggest difference I can talk about is Storm Eunice. So as we all know, Storm Eunice really affected things, and I'd imagine out here affected you guys quite extensively as well. There's a village called Bulmer near Sudbury, where we and OpenReach are both operating a fibre network. At the height of Storm Eunice, our network went down. We had it back up live in 14.5 hours. It took OpenReach 18 days to get it back up and live. So we work quite quickly because being, pointing up here like it's still there, being based in Colchester and having a centralised service team, we can go out and react very, very quickly to service issues, as opposed to having to filter through various departments out to third parties.
I know Matt's let you know some of my questions, but they're useful for other people to know. So all the other service providers offer a 150 meg service, or in some do 100 and some do an 80. My major concern is that your minimum over and above your standard sort of 50 meg service, which is below what I'm currently getting, is going to double my monthly fee. Right. Whereas if I went to a 150 meg service for approximately the same price with all of the others, then that would be, you know, a preferable route. I know you said on the webinar that you trialled it in one village.
Yep.
I've been in contact with some of my broadband champion colleagues, and one particularly in Spaldwick, who have got OpenReach there. They said the majority, or a very large number of people, went for their 150 meg service out of the box. So it is very popular. It is obviously popular, or else all those other providers wouldn't make it as an offering. They've done their marketing. Why aren't you doing the same thing?
An element of reasons, you know, and I'll be really transparent about both how our financials work, but then also the reception with our customers as well. So we've trialled it in 6 villages now, mainly in Essex, must be said. The take-up was very, very low. It made a very low product mix. We then trialled it in Sudbury when we did a town rollout, because we thought urban demographic might affect things. It again related to about 6.5% of our product mix take-ups, penetration. So we found people don't take it up, because if they're going for 150 meg, they move quite quickly into a 300 meg service. That being said, there are other providers that provide it, so it is obviously a product that the wider market wants, even if our target area hasn't necessarily wanted it. Our investment is based on us hitting an overall future protected revenue. Being brutally frank, that protected revenue is based on a certain amount of revenue generated per user, an average revenue per user. Where we've looked at a 150 meg at the moment in our current product mix, it doesn't generate the average we need to go and get the investment to go and build to other communities. It's no coincidence if you look at the providers that offer a 150 meg service, take BT for an example, there's a reason they haven't brought it to Hilton. They can't make it financially work. We can on our current price mix that we've got at the moment.
So we're subsidising the build out, is what you're saying there?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, because we're making sure there's enough demand to enable the
Even
rollout
with the
network.
gigabit vouchers, which, okay.
The other thing to bear in mind when you look at an average contract price as well, build in a year of not be paying a penny for the service as well. So it's very easy to look at a 24-month contract. Our 300 works out, I think, it's there or thereabouts about £43. My math's good, but off the top of my head, it's there or thereabouts £43 on average. Add on another 12 months of using the service for free, it comes down to about £36.50 on average.
Okay, and I guess on the same front, the prices for all of your 300, 600 and 900 are significantly more than Sky, TalkTalk, everybody else's 300, 600, 900 as well. So that's for the same reasons, is we're paying the premium for the bandwidth as well because of the subsidising the build-out.
It's not paying the premium for the bandwidth, it's, well, I could be really flippant and say, yeah, take those services, they're not here. You know, by all means, you're more than welcome to shop around, and I'm not going to be flippant. The challenge comes where you look at, especially a provider like Sky, that don't own their own infrastructure. So they're providing an on-top service. All they do is lease fibre space off either Virgin, GigaClear or BT at this stage, and they provide a service down the top. When we open our network up, those that want to go in a race to the bottom, absolutely, there'll be providers on our network that you can shop around for. There's not a problem there at all. We have to satisfy our investors and to know that there's enough revenue that ultimately at some point we will make up the cost of that network. You know, we are a commercial company, we're not a charity. We do need to make sure it pays.
And
But
so,
the amount that, oh, sorry.
and so are OpenReach. I mean, they're a commercial company as well.
Absolutely.
So they have to fund, you know, however they fund for their investors, the same thing. They're building out a network which they lease. And it costs them the same, I guess, to roll it out as you do. Now they've decided not to do it here
Well, in some
near
cases,
term.
perhaps it costs less, in some cases more. The key point is there's a reason they're not building in Hilton, because they can't make it cost effective on their current price mix.
Great. Go, Richard.
In terms of the, so in that scenario, you're going to be charging Sky or BBC perhaps, whoever it is who's going to be a provider. But are you regulated in how much you charge them?
Yes, by Ofcom, yeah. And obviously by our monopoly standards as well in that.
Very helpful.
I can say I've been through this 3 times now, going back to pre-broadband, getting ADSL into the village, then go for VDSL. I can just I'll make the statement that each time BT, as it was at the time, said, "I'm sorry, we're not coming to Hilton because it's not economically viable." And in fact, they shared the spreadsheet with me once and said there aren't enough businesses, there aren't enough line, we won't do it. And at each time they've done it, and they've done it much ahead of when they've done it. I'm not saying at all they're going to do it. There are examples of them saying they're not going to do it because it's not financially viable. Whether it's a bit of a kick from the government, I know they get some funding given to them to do it, and that's happening now, obviously, with the government rolling out as well. Is there is more financial encouragement to speed things up when it's not financially viable, because there's lots of places that aren't, and the same happened with mobile as well. So, not saying it's going to happen, but that's happened twice in the past.
The only other caveat I would say to that is BT on a commercial build are not viable for the gigabit voucher scheme. So they're only viable for it if it's part of a community fibre project.
Yeah, I was going back to the fact is, but even before that, in the ADSL days, they just said, no way you're going to get ADSL,
Absolutely.
and then not very long after that, we
get this question a lot.
Yeah.
The question I always say back to anyone that asks me is, perfect, when was the last time someone from BT stood in front of you and said they're going to build it? You know, we've committed in writing and verbally, and I'm here in front of you on record saying we're going to build it. If BT have done the same, fantastic, you've got the choice of 2 fibre providers. But to the best of my knowledge, they haven't, and they have no firm commitment at the moment. Any other questions?
Yeah, once the contract is finished,
Yep.
and nobody decides to buy access off you,
Okay. Yep.
so there's no competition.
Yeah.
What's to stop you charging whatever you like for the system?
A couple of things. First of all, obviously, exactly as you said, we're mandated and regulated by Ofcom. It's the first one. Second of all, we don't remove any of your existing network. You know, if we were to say rocket our prices in 2.5 years' time, you can still go back to copper. It's counterintuitive for us. You've seen the 6-year rollout plan, and we know the power of social media. If we suddenly rocketed our prices, it would be everywhere, and we'd never be able to build another network again, because everyone would go, I don't want to do that. Since 2017, we've only raised our prices once, and that's by a 50p increment. So we don't tend to raise our prices because it's built on a long-term investment model. At the end of the contract, you have 3 choices. 1, we issue you a renewal price, and we say, look, thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, this is your renewal price for a further contract. 2, you go back to your existing provider. But the third one, and the reason we're building this network is to open it up, because our share price is valued on the size of our network and the amount of wholesale businesses that have access to our network. Being brutally frank, I'm a shareholder in the business, we all are. We're all given shares every year within the business. It is in our interest to open this network up and to make it as attractive as possible to all third-party providers. This is my pension, to be brutally frank.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
That's right. I can't stress enough, there is no such thing as a silly question, and if there's something we haven't covered, I know what it's like on the walk home, you go, bugger, I wish I'd asked that. I'd encourage anyone with a smartphone to take a photo of that slide if you haven't already got Matt's contact details, because when he's not on holiday, on the rare occasions, he does take some time away from work. If you can't hold Matt, my contact details are up on there as well, and if anyone wants my card with my number, I'm more than happy to give you that as well this afternoon. But I think the key message that I want to take away from here, and to everyone that I talk to about these networks, is it's about understanding your needs. This isn't a service that we think is going to be right for everyone now. That's why we only work on 25%. We want everyone to have the option for the service. We want everyone to have the ability to talk to us about the service. And again, if you have any queries or questions, just come through to us. That's what we're here for. That's why we come out and engage with you in your community, so that you can ask us questions. And certainly if in a group setting, I'll be hanging around afterwards for a little while, as will Matt. If you want to come up and have a one-on-one chat about your requirements, by all means, we're all ears. But otherwise, thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.